Buenas, hoy os traigo un material interesante que he adquirido a lo largo del tiempo. Me parece una joya en bruto. El programa de televisión Rockschool, emitido en la BBC en los años 80. La serie se sumerge en la historia del rock y nos muestra y enseña cómo interpretar a la perfección los estilos rock, heavy metal, punk, reggae, disco, electrónica, de los tres principales instrumentos que componen una banda: la guitarra, el bajo y la batería. Además, con entrevistas a los rockstars del momento: John Taylor, de Duran Duran, Stanley Clarke, Ian Pace, Gary Moore, Al Palmer, Herbie Hancock y un largo etcétera de artistas que muestran cómo las bandas y los músicos que idolatramos hicieran lo que hicieron y se hace hoy en día. Nos presentaron el futuro de la música, mostrando por primera vez al mundo sintetizadores y guitarras MIDI. Eso que hoy está a la orden del día, en el momento sonaba alienígena. Y mucho antes de que apareciera Internet y YouTube hiciera todo inmediatamente accesible. Os dejo ya con sus tres presentadores: Henry Thomas al bajo, DJ Cartwright a la guitarra y John Nichols a la batería, y su Rock School, episodio 1.
Welcome to Rock School. If you've been in a band for years or you're just thinking of forming your first band, then Rock School is for you. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to be looking at how the guitar, the bass and the drums work together in a band context, and we're going to be looking at the styles of blues, rock, heavy metal, funk and reggae.
A lot of the musical ideas we're going to show you can be found in books, but what books can't show you is how the individual instruments fit together to produce the overall sound, and that's what Rock School sets out to do.
Not only will we be working out ideas here in the studio, we'll be looking at clips of bands in concert. We went out and interviewed one or two faces. They might be familiar to you. Here's somebody talking about how they started to play bass guitar.
I didn't actually start playing bass until Roger joined, and I was so into playing with him. It was a feeling that I'd never felt before. That was what really made me decide. At one point when Roger was drumming, I was like playing guitar on one number and then playing bass on another one. But if you'd heard me play guitar, you'd know why I changed to bass.
When forming a band, the most important thing is to have a good sound, and this depends on two things: your equipment and you.
So let's begin by looking at the hardware. How will the gear shape your sound?
First of all, the guitar. Just over 30 years ago, electric solid-body guitars were developed, and for a while they were marketed almost exclusively by two American companies, Fender and Gibson. Now, we went to find out what makes up the components of their guitars.
This is one of many types of bodies that this particular one will be slated for a Les Paul. You have two different types of wood incorporated into one body. The maple would more or less contribute to the brilliance, sustain, the high frequency, and the mahogany would relate more so to warmth, the basic character of the guitar tonality. So between the two, this produces quite a unique sound.
This is the Les Paul, okay. This is a much sort of longer sustaining kind of sound.
Another significant portion of the magic formula, so to speak, and commonly these little items have been referred to as pickups, because in essence that's what they basically do. They pick up a signal. This particular pickup, which is called the humbucking pickup, was developed in the late 50s and essentially took one of these single coils, which is a single piece of plastic with wire on it, and took two of them and placed them side by side, a North Pole, South Pole, if you will, and actually they're trying to cancel each other, so to speak. Humbucking basically means just that. Humbucking pickups buck hum, or stop radiated noise or interference.
These are very powerful pickups because these were the original 1959 Gibson patent applied for, as they're now in pickups. And they've got a lot of power in them, really. That's where you get that really long sort of sustain.
The hours that go into a neck would boggle your mind. The final sanding and contouring. The ellipse that's created is crucial to the feel that a person's going to have to work with. This fingerboard appears to be flat, but it's not. As you can see from the tail end, there's a curvature. And this particular curvature is a 1 foot radius. And that's critical to how the guitar will feel. This particular item we simply call a bridge. The basic function of a bridge is to adjust the height of the strings for easy playing, action, and as important, if not more important, it's designed to intonate the instrument. String gauges being what they are today, everything from bob wire to almost rubber bands, very slinky strings. You must have that ability to intonate the instrument. Once all these parts are put together, you've probably put 3 months worth of work into this instrument. And after finishing, it becomes almost human.
So the main components of the electric guitar are the neck, the bridge, the tuning heads, the body, and of course, the pickups.
Now, a pickup is basically a magnet with copper coils wound around. When a metal string vibrates, the signal is converted into electricity in the coil and sent along to the lead, and then from the lead it goes to the amplifier.
We've already seen how the Gibson Les Paul uses the distinctive sound of the humbucking pickup. That is, 2 single coils connected together. Now, Fender guitars are much more associated with single coil pickups. We asked Gary Moore to demonstrate the range of sounds that you can get from these guitars.
It's kind of like, if you play a Strat very quietly, it still gets very bright. It's not like a Les Paul where you turn it down and it gets kind of duller and duller. You can get a very sort of a funky sound, you know. You know, whereas the Les Paul has got more sort of a singing sound. There's some nice things you can do with a Stratocaster. You can get like a sort of a forky sort of a sound by putting the toggle switch between the pickup positions. Well, that's the old way of doing it, but now, of course, you have 5-way switches, but this is like one of the old ones, so that sort of Martin Knopfler type thing. Well, that sort of sound. And you can also get a very jazzy tone from it, if you like, you know. much sort of mellower kind of sound. But the classic sort of Strat sound is really that sort of biting to that.
We've been looking at the design and development of electric guitars, and nowadays there's a whole range of good quality, cheaper models on the market. Now, if we have a look at one of these, this is very nice, but maybe we'll have a look at this one. No matter what price you're going to pay for a guitar, there are some features that you ought to look at. The first thing is to play the instrument. Make sure that all the notes are playing cleanly right up the neck. Check that there aren't any fret buzzers or rattles or things like this. Perhaps you could notice the action. Now, the action is the height of the guitar strings above the fingerboard. If the action's too high, then you'll find that fretting notes and barring chords higher up the neck is actually extremely difficult. You ought to notice as well if the guitar's staying in tune. It's possible that the strings are new in it, so you can stretch them like this. If the strings keep slipping out of tune, you want to check that the machine heads aren't actually slipping. This could be quite an expensive thing to correct. Another thing connected with tuning is intonation. The guitar should be in tune the whole way up the neck. Now, the way to check this is to play a harmonic on the 12th fret like this, and then fret the note. Like this and this. Now, these two notes should sound exactly the same. If they're not, then check to see that you can actually adjust the string length by moving the bridge saddles backwards and forwards. If you find that you have got buzzers or rattles or things like this, if the intonation is inaccurate, then look down the neck to make sure that you haven't got a warped or distorted neck. Now, if you look down the neck, you can see that all the frets should be smooth. Run your hands down each side to check this. The neck should look fairly straight, with possibly a very slight concave dip in the middle, like that. And finally, of course, you should check all the controls are working, try out the tone, the volume, the knobs, you know, everything. Click all the switches so that when you buy a guitar, you know exactly what range of sounds that you can get from the instrument.
Moving on now to the bass guitar, the main developments lie with the pickups and with active circuitry. Now, the bass sound is probably the hardest sound to get right on stage because the bass frequencies are usually covered up by other instruments. But now, with the addition of actives and preamps inside the guitar, it's possible to go from a low, deep bass to a high, biting treble. One of the leading exponents for the use of the active is Stanley Clarke. Another development for the bass guitar has been the fretless. And with this, you'll notice the neck is different. It's no frets, it's like a double bass, which enables you to hold notes for a long time, like this. It also enables you to slur notes. Along with the fretless, you can use effects like chorus pedals and phase pedals. Now, the leading exponent of the fretless bass is Jaco Pastorius, and the sort of lines that he thought of are now used in the music of Paul Young, Nick Hayward, Japan, and the Police. We're going to incorporate some of those sounds in this next piece of music. 1, 2. The guitar or bass that you choose is only half the story. The other half lies with the amp. An amplifier is a pretty sophisticated piece of machinery, but there are basically two types, valve and transistor, and two basic setups, combo or stack.
Now, the first app we've got here is a valve combo. This is the classic Vox AC30, as used by groups like the Shadows and the Beatles in the early 60s. However, groups began to play in much larger venues. They needed more power. So, the 4x12 speaker cabinet was developed, and amp stacks like this Marshall became very prominent, used originally by guitarists like Pete Townsend, later on by Jimi Hendrix. Then manufacturers began to develop the transistorized amp. This was compact, light, relatively cheap to produce, and it gave a very good clean sound. However, some guitarists complained of the earlier models that you couldn't really get that warm sound that was associated with the overdriven valve amp. Anyway, they've kept working on the transistorized amps, and this is a modern transistorized combo. It's very versatile. And notice, once again, we've come back to combos. This is because PAs now are very powerful, efficient. You don't need to project your sound to the back of a large hall. The PA will do it for you.
Having got these two out of the way, we get to the drums. The oldest and noblest of musical instruments. People have got some very funny ideas about the drums. I think they forget just how subtle and expressive they can be. So, let's have a closer look at the kit. The basic kit is divided into four areas. We have the drums themselves, and we have the skins that go on the drums, and these we call heads. Then we have the cymbals, and we have the hardware and pedals. Now, starting with the drums, these are traditionally made from varying numbers of plies of hardwood. Maple, birch, mahogany are all commonly used. And the different manufacturers have worked out different ways of ensuring the perfect roundness of the shell, which is vital to the projection and the sound. The bass drum, this forms the foundation of the kit. The tom-toms, they range right from little 6-inch ones up here, right through to 16-inch, 18-inch, even bigger down this end. The snare drum, this is central to the kit, and we'll be having a close look at that in a moment. Next we come to the heads. These are plastic. The reason they're plastic is because it's much stronger than animal skin, it's more uniform, and it's not affected so much by temperature and humidity. Next we come to the cymbals. Low down here we tend to have the ride cymbals. They're called ride cymbals because you can play rhythms on them like this. As you can hear on this ride cymbal, there's a bell in the centre. And then the hi-hat, again you can play rhythms on them. Higher up we tend to have crash cymbals, which have different weights and sizes. They're fast crashes. And then again we can have more colourful cymbals like this Chinese one over here. And you can also play ride patterns on this. Finally we come to the hardware. The important thing about this is that it should be really strong and not move, and you should be able to position everything exactly where you want it. And two important bits of hardware, the bass drum pedal, which can have a hard wood or a hard felt beater on it, and the hi-hat pedal. The hi-hats are a horizontally mounted pair of cymbals, and the hi-hat pedal allows you to open and close them and get this sort of rhythm. Now let's have a closer look at the various components which make up the drum kit. The snare drum provides the backbone of the rhythm. It's basically just a shallow tom-tom. But, as you can see, it's got wire snares over the bottom here, which are tensioned via this straining device, so that you get this characteristic snare drum sound. Also, you notice, like in this classic old Ludwig of mine, it's a steel shell, which suits the sharpness of the attack. But, of course, you can have wooden shells, like this one here. The wood's obviously more mellow, and the deeper shell gives you a deeper sound. Then again, at the top end of the market, you can get a brass shell one like this. The brass has obviously got a particular resonance of its own. And then at the other end of the market, there's this remarkable new thing, which is actually a laminated paper shell, and it's got a pre-tuned head. And I can show you the difference in sound that the depth of a shell makes by lowering this onto the drum. So here, fairly deep sound as we go closer. Higher, on the shell, a thin sound. Now, moving on to heads, there's been enormous advances in here. These are all basically the same. They're double thickness laminates with an oil film in the middle like this, which has the effect of damping the head quite a lot. They're very popular with rock and funk players. These are probably a bit more familiar. This is an ordinary white head which comes in different weights and thicknesses. The thinner it is, the more resonant it is. And in the middle we have these which are very popular, the pinstripe and the black dot, or donut as it's sometimes called. This black dot again is a damping device, but it's still quite a lively head. There's still quite a lot of resonance coming through. The pinstripe is a little bit more damped, gives a nice blatty sort of funky sound. I like that a lot. Double thickness again. The fibre skin here is an attempt to sort of copy the old warmth of a natural animal skin. And finally, quick move over to the cymbals. Again, a bewildering variety on the market these days. Don't be overwhelmed though, because they're basically serving the same three functions. Crash cymbals for punctuations, right from small splashes like this, right through to different weights and sizes. For instance, this very heavy, almost gong-like crash here, which can be used as a ride as well. A thick one at the top here is almost like a bell. Moving down, we get to the exotic sorts, like these three chinas. Again, a heavy one. Here, even small ones are coming now. Different sizes, different weights, different qualities. The same here. This is a china with sizzles in it, so you get a long sizzle sort of sound. And down the bottom here we come to the ride cymbals, the third category. This is a very heavy ride, almost gong-like. And by contrast, we have what they call a flat ride, which has got no bell at all in the centre, so you get a very sticky sound, which is very nice. Not so many overtones. I can't resist.
As a preview of the weeks to come, we're going to end this week by looking at 3 different musical styles, and we're each going to explain how we get sounds from our equipment. First of all, heavy metal. Now, I'm using a guitar this time with humbucking pickups on them, which, as you remember, Gary Moore says, makes them much more sustained and more powerful. I'm also turning my amp up a lot louder. The guitar will overdrive the amp, and I could add a distortion pedal as well.
For rock, you want a punchy sound, so I've set the pickup in the middle, and I've got a lot of bass and a lot of middle. I'm going to hit the strings really hard.
The drums, big open sound, lots of cymbals, and you hit them hard. 1, 2, 3.
Now for funk, you can use the same tone, but you're going to hit it this time with the thumb. And you're going to pull with the strings. Now that's quite a trebly tone. So you can take off some of the treble by just hitting this little toy here, the chorus.
On the drums, a much tighter sound. Tight snare drum, tight hi-hat, and a heavy downbeat on the bass drum.
I switched back to using a guitar with single coil pickups because for funk you want the guitar to sound a lot more crisp and light. I've also set the pickups out of phase, and I'm going to use a chorus pedal to space the sound out a bit.
Finally, for a reggae type thing, I haven't got time to tune the toms down, so I'm going to use this timbali and some rim clicks, and again a very tight hi-hat.
For reggae you want to get a sharp cutting guitar sound, so I've switched to the bridge, that is the treble pickup.
For bass, you want a heavy, heavy bass. So I'm putting the pickup on full bass, and I'm going to my amp, and I'm putting everything on full. No treble, just heavy bass.